Jack was 17 years old, a tall boy with dark skin and sharp, determined eyes. He didn't come from money like the other students in his school. In fact, he had grown up in a small orphanage on the edge of the city. His spot in the elite academy was not earned through wealth or family power, but through a hard-fought scholarship. While most of the students arrived at the school in shiny cars driven by chauffeurs, Jack walked every day, sometimes taking 2 buses. His books clutched tightly against his chest. For him, this school was a chance, a golden door to a future he had only dreamed about. But for the rest of the students, Jack was just the poor boy, a stranger in their glittering world of privilege. The school had organized a week-long trip to a private island off the coast. It was meant to be an adventure, team building, relaxation, and exploration. The island was lush and mysterious, with dense trees, white sands, and unpredictable weather. Every student was excited. For them, this was just another luxurious experience, another story to brag about when they returned. Jack, however, had mixed feelings. He wanted to go, to see the ocean, the island, the adventure. But he also knew what awaited him: judgment, whispers, insults. He had experienced it all before. Among the group of 10 students, 2 girls stood out. One was Charlotte, the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city. She was beautiful, with flawless skin, expensive jewelry, and a constant look of superiority on her face. Everyone obeyed her not because they liked her, but because they feared her sharp tongue and powerful family. She had everything Jack didn't: money, influence, and an army of followers who treated her like royalty. The other was Katrine, a soft-spoken, innocent girl with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Unlike Charlotte, she didn't flaunt her background. She was quiet but observant, and when she looked at Jack, there was no cruelty in her gaze, only curiosity and a faint kindness he rarely received. The ferry ride to the island was loud and chaotic. The rich kids laughed, posed for selfies, and ignored Jack completely. When he tried to sit near them, they shifted away, some even whispering loud enough for him to hear. Why is he even here? He doesn't belong with us. Scholarship kids shouldn't get to come on trips like this. Charlotte smirked, her voice cutting through the laughter. Don't even think about sitting with us, Jack. Go stand somewhere else. Maybe the captain has a seat for you. The others laughed. Jack clenched his fists but said nothing. He was used to this. Fighting back would only make it worse. He turned away, his eyes on the vast ocean, the waves crashing against the boat. Only Katrine spoke up, her voice calm but firm. Stop it, Charlotte. That's not fair. He has every right to be here just like us. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Please, Katrine, don't waste your pity on him. He's just a charity case. Jack didn't respond. Instead, he forced a small smile toward Katrine, a silent thank you. When the ferry finally reached the island, the group cheered. They ran onto the sand, excited for the adventure ahead. Jack followed quietly, carrying his own small bag while the others had assistance unloading their heavy luggage. The teachers gave instructions, but it was clear that the students were more interested in their own fun. They set up tents, played music, and began treating the trip like a private vacation. Jack tried to join in, but every time he got close, Charlotte or one of her friends would push him away, with words, with looks, sometimes even with laughter. The first day passed quickly. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The group built a campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Jack sat a little distance away, listening, wishing he could be part of the laughter. But when he tried to sit closer, Charlotte sneered. Not here, Jack. You don't belong in our circle. Go sit somewhere else. The others shifted uncomfortably, but didn't dare oppose her. Even the boys stayed silent. Jack stood there for a moment, embarrassed, the firelight flickering across his face. Then he quietly stepped back, finding a rock to sit on near the edge of the trees. The night air was cool, the stars bright above, but he felt completely alone. Katrine watched from the firelight. She wanted to go over, to sit with him, but Charlotte's watchful eyes kept her frozen. Still, she whispered to herself, they're wrong. He deserves better. As the night deepened, the sound of waves grew louder. In the distance, clouds were gathering, dark and heavy. The teachers called for everyone to prepare for the night, reminding them that island weather could change suddenly, but no one took it seriously. They laughed, continuing their games. Jack, however, noticed the wind picking up, the smell of rain in the air. Something told him the night would not be so simple. He glanced at the sky, then at the group still laughing around the fire. A storm was coming, and with it everything was about to change. The night fell heavier than anyone had expected. At first it was just a light drizzle, the kind of rain that made the campfire hiss and sputter. The students groaned, some pulling out umbrellas while others retreated to their tents, giggling as if it were just another part of the adventure. But Jack knew better. He had grown up in the city, yes, but he had also read about nature, about weather on the islands, about how storms here weren't to be underestimated. The drizzle grew sharper, the raindrops thickening, hammering against the earth like falling stones. The wind began to roar, shaking the flimsy tents. The laughter faded. The island, which had looked so beautiful during the day, now felt wild and dangerous. Palms swayed violently, their long fronds snapping in the wind. The ocean, once calm and glittering, now churned with fury. Inside the largest tent, the students huddled together, 10 of them squeezed in, their expensive jackets and blankets pulled tight. The teachers had gone to check on supplies, leaving the students to manage on their own. Jack tried to enter the tent too, dripping wet from the storm. His hair clung to his forehead, his clothes soaked. He stepped inside, shivering, desperate for warmth. But before he could sit, Charlotte's voice rang out like a whip. No, not him. He doesn't belong here. Jack froze. The others looked from her to him, uncertain. The tent was crowded, but there was space if they shifted. Still, nobody dared challenge Charlotte. "He'll make everything smell," Charlotte sneered, her tone crueler in the flickering lantern light. Poor boy, probably doesn't even know what a shower is. And who knows what kind of diseases he has. Out, now. Jack's heart sank. "Please, it's freezing out there." His voice was low, almost drowned by the howling wind. Charlotte crossed her arms. "You heard me. Get out!" Nobody moved to help him. Some looked away, ashamed but silent. Others giggled nervously, siding with Charlotte out of fear. Katrine's face turned red with anger. "Charlotte, stop this! He's one of us. You can't just throw him out in a storm." But Charlotte smirked, leaning closer to Katrine. "Then maybe you should go with him if you care so much." The words stung. Katrine's lips trembled, but she didn't move. The storm outside roared louder, and Jack knew the decision had been made. He stood there for a moment, his body tense, then slowly turned and stepped back into the rain. The cold struck him like knives. His thin jacket clung to his skin, offering no warmth. The trees whipped back and forth, the ground muddy beneath his shoes. He found a spot under a half-broken tree and sat, hugging his knees to his chest. His body shivered uncontrollably. But even as the storm battered him, he didn't cry. He had lived through worse. Loneliness was not new to him. He stared at the dark sky, lightning splitting it open, thunder echoing through the island. Inside the tent, the others weren't safe either. The wind tore at the fabric, rattling the poles. Water leaked from the seams, soaking their expensive clothes. Some screamed as the tent nearly lifted off the ground. Then, with a terrifying crack, the wind ripped the tent apart. The fabric snapped, the poles collapsed, and the group of students tumbled out into the rain. Their belongings scattered. They screamed and cursed, their fear raw now. Their laughter was gone. Their arrogance was gone. They were just kids, drenched and shivering on an island in the middle of a raging storm. One boy pointed at Jack, his voice trembling. "This is his fault! He cursed us!" The others picked it up quickly, desperate to blame someone. "Yeah, he must have wished this on us. He's the reason everything's going wrong." Jack staggered to his feet, his body weak with cold. "I didn't do anything," he said firmly, though his voice shook. "The storm is nature. You can't blame me." But they didn't want to hear reason. Fear made them crueler, their voices rising above the storm. Katrine stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Stop it! Stop blaming him! This storm would have happened no matter what. You all know that." Charlotte's eyes burned with hatred. "Defending him again, Katrine? Maybe you like him. Maybe you're just as pathetic as he is." Katrine flinched but didn't back down. "At least he has more courage than you." The storm raged around them. The students were wet, freezing, terrified. And in that moment, something even more terrifying cut through the chaos, a low, guttural growl. The group froze. From the edge of the forest, glowing eyes appeared. One pair, then two, then 5. Shadows moved between the trees. their shapes clear even in the rain. Wolves, a pack, large and hungry. Their fur was dark and slick from the storm. Their teeth bared in the flashes of lightning. The students screamed. Some stumbled back, slipping in the mud. Charlotte clutched one of the boy's arms, her arrogance vanishing, her face pale with terror. The wolves stepped closer, circling. The storm seemed to fade for a moment, replaced by the sound of snarls and growls. Jack's eyes narrowed. His heart pounded, but he stood tall. "Don't move," he said, his voice steady. "Stay together. Don't run." Nobody listened. They were too terrified. But Jack stepped forward, putting himself between the wolves and the students. The pack leader growled louder, baring its fangs. The storm, the fear, the insults, everything had led to this moment. Jack clenched his fists, his breath visible in the cold air. If he ran, they'd all die. If he stood his ground, maybe, just maybe, he could save them. And for the first time that night, the students weren't laughing at him. They were looking at him with wide, desperate eyes, depending on him. The rain poured harder, drumming against the earth as if the sky itself had split open. The students huddled close, their fear written across their pale faces. The wolves edged forward, their bodies low, muscles rippling under wet fur. Their eyes glowed golden under flashes of lightning, unblinking and merciless. Charlotte's shriek pierced the air. "They're going to kill us! Somebody do something!" Nobody moved. The rich boys who bragged about their strength during gym class now trembled like children. Their expensive jackets, their perfect hair, their confidence, none of it mattered against the glowing eyes of hungry predators. Jack took a slow step forward, his boots sinking into the mud. His clothes clung to him, soaked and heavy, but his posture was steady. He had no weapons, no shield, just instinct and courage. "Stay behind me," Jack said, his voice calm but commanding. The storm seemed to soften for a second as everyone focused on him. The alpha wolf let out a chilling growl, snapping its jaws. Another wolf crept to the side, circling, testing the group's weakness. The students whimpered, some clutching each other, their eyes darting toward the trees as if escape was possible. Jack raised his hand. "Don't run. That's what they want. If you run, they'll chase you. Just stay still." The pack edged closer. The ground squelched beneath their paws. The smell of wet fur and danger filled the air. Jack knew wolves. He had read about them in old library books. They were predators, yes, but also intelligent. They respected strength. If he showed fear, the pack would strike. If he showed courage, maybe, just maybe, they would hesitate. He picked up a thick branch from the ground, water dripping from its surface. It wasn't much, but it was something. He gripped it tightly, raising it like a weapon. "Back off," Jack growled, his voice low, steady. The alpha snarled, unimpressed, and lunged. The students screamed. Jack swung the branch with all his strength, striking the wolf across its muzzle. The crack echoed through the storm. The wolf yelped, stumbling back but not retreating. Its golden eyes blazed with fury now. Jack's heart pounded, but he didn't falter. He stood taller, gripping the branch like a warrior. "Come on," he shouted over the storm. "I'm not afraid of you." The wolves hesitated. The pack spread out, circling wider. The students panicked again, crying and trembling. Katrine, her voice trembling but brave, shouted from behind Jack, "Don't let them see fear. Listen to him." For a moment, something shifted. The students, though terrified, froze in place, pressing together instead of scattering. Jack's words had reached them. The wolves advanced again. Jack swung the branch wildly, shouting, his voice carrying through the storm. The fire in his eyes, the strength in his stance, it wasn't something the students had ever seen in him before. The alpha lunged again, snapping its jaws inches from Jack's arm. Jack rammed the branch forward, jabbing it into the wolf's chest. The wolf growled and retreated, pacing in frustration. The rest of the pack hesitated. Their growls grew lower, uncertain. The storm howled, lightning flashed, and in that chaos, Jack's courage stood like fire against the night. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the alpha wolf turned away. With a final frustrated snarl, it retreated into the trees. The rest of the pack followed, melting back into the shadows, their glowing eyes vanishing one by one. Silence fell. The rain still poured, the wind still roared, but the danger had passed. The students collapsed to the ground, gasping, their hearts pounding. Charlotte sobbed, her mascara running down her face. One of the boys muttered, "We could have died." Another whispered, "Jack, he saved us." Jack stood there, chest heaving, gripping the broken branch. His hands trembled now that the danger was gone, but he didn't let them see. He tossed the branch aside, his dark eyes scanning the forest to make sure the wolves were truly gone. Katrine stepped forward slowly, her gaze soft, almost glowing with admiration. You protected us," she said quietly, her voice carrying even through the storm. Jack shrugged, though his body still shook from the fight. Someone had to. The students looked at him differently now. No laughter, no whispers, just awe and guilt. The same boy who had been shoved aside, insulted, and humiliated was the only reason they were still alive. Charlotte avoided his eyes, her face twisted with something between shame and stubbornness. But for once, she didn't have a cruel word ready. The storm began to ease, the thunder fading into the distance. The rain slowed, becoming a light drizzle once more. The exhausted group huddled together under the broken tents, too tired to argue, too shocked to sleep. Jack sat apart from them, leaning against a tree, staring into the dark forest. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt tired. But somewhere deep inside, he knew things had changed. For the first time since he had entered that school, the other students didn't see him as the poor boy. They saw him as the one who stood when no one else could. And that, Jack thought as he closed his eyes, was worth more than all the money in the world. The morning came slowly, as if the island itself was too exhausted to welcome the sun. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving behind a heavy silence. The ground was soaked, muddy, and scattered with broken pieces of tents and luggage. The salty smell of the ocean mixed with the dampness of wet leaves and wood. For a moment, everything was still. The students stirred one by one, their clothes still damp, their bodies sore from sleeping on the hard ground. When they opened their eyes, the memories of the night came rushing back. The storm, the collapse of their tents, the glowing eyes in the darkness, and Jack standing between them and death. No one laughed that morning. No one whispered cruel jokes. Katrine was the first to rise. She walked quietly toward Jack, who was sitting near the shoreline, staring at the endless stretch of sea. His face was tired, his clothes still wet, but there was a calmness in his posture. The sun broke through the clouds, shining on him, making him look almost like a figure carved out of strength itself. "You didn't sleep, did you?" Katrine asked softly, sitting beside him. Jack shook his head, his eyes still on the horizon. "Not really. I wanted to keep watch, just in case the wolves came back." Katrine studied him for a moment, her heart swelling with gratitude and something she couldn't quite name yet. "You saved us," she whispered. "If it wasn't for you, we—" Her voice trailed off, but the truth hung in the air. Jack finally looked at her, his dark eyes softening. "I just did what anyone would have done." Katrine smiled faintly. "No, Jack, not anyone. Only you." Behind them, the other students gathered slowly. They looked different now, not glamorous, not arrogant, just tired kids humbled by fear. The boys who had mocked Jack yesterday avoided his eyes. The girls who had laughed at Charlotte's cruel words now shifted uncomfortably, guilty. Charlotte, however, stood apart. Her expensive clothes were ruined, her perfect hair a tangled mess. She tried to compose herself, to regain the image of control she always carried, but her eyes betrayed her. She looked shaken, small, fragile. One of the boys, trembling as he adjusted his jacket, finally spoke. "Jack, thank you. Last night you were brave. Braver than any of us." Another added, "We were wrong about you." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. No one dared insult him anymore. No one dared treat him as the poor boy. Jack didn't answer. He just nodded once, then returned his gaze to the sea. He didn't need their validation. But hearing it, after all the cruelty, brought a quiet warmth inside him. The teachers eventually returned, having been caught in another part of the island during the storm. When they saw the state of the students, the collapsed tents and the fear in their eyes, they immediately decided to cut the trip short. Safety came first. The ferry was called earlier than planned. The students didn't complain. No one wanted to stay on the island any longer. The adventure they had imagined had turned into something darker, something that humbled them all. When the ferry finally arrived, the group boarded silently. No loud chatter, no arrogant laughter. They sat quietly, staring at the waves, each lost in thought. Katrine sat beside Jack this time. No one dared stop her. No one teased her. And for the first time, Jack felt like he wasn't completely alone. Halfway through the ride, Charlotte finally broke her silence. She stood, her voice shaky, but her words cutting through the sound of the waves. "We wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for Jack. I was wrong." The admission shocked everyone. Charlotte never admitted being wrong about anything. She lowered her gaze, ashamed, then sat back down without saying another word. Jack didn't respond, but inside, he felt a weight lift from his chest. By the time they returned to the city, word of what had happened had already begun to spread. The storm, the broken tents, the wolves, and most importantly, the boy who saved them. At school the next day, Jack walked through the halls as whispers followed him. But this time they weren't mocking. They weren't cruel. "Is that him? The one who fought the wolves? I heard he saved everyone. Jack's a hero." For the first time, Jack wasn't invisible. He wasn't the poor scholarship boy. He was someone people respected. Katrine walked beside him, her smile warm and supportive. And even though Jack didn't show it on his face, his heart felt lighter than it had in years. That night on the island had changed everything, and it was only the beginning. The days after the island trip felt different, almost unreal. Jack, who had once been the quiet outsider of the academy, now found himself in the center of attention. Students who never spoke to him before now greeted him in the hallways. Some tried to sit with him at lunch, while others whispered stories about his bravery, exaggerating the details until they sounded like legends. But Jack didn't let the sudden popularity get to his head. He remained the same, quiet, humble, focused. He wasn't interested in fame. He had lived too long being invisible to suddenly care about being admired. What mattered more to him was that, for the first time, people weren't laughing at him. They weren't mocking him. And then there was Katrine. She stayed by his side after the trip, walking with him to classes, sharing lunch at his table, and asking him questions about his life. Unlike the others, her interest wasn't fake. She didn't want to bask in the glow of his new reputation. She wanted to know Jack himself. One afternoon, they sat together under a tree on the school grounds, the autumn leaves scattering in the breeze. "So," Katrine said softly, "you grew up in an orphanage?" Jack nodded, leaning back against the tree trunk. "Yeah, my parents, I never knew them. The orphanage was all I had. The scholarship was my only way into this school." Katrine's eyes softened. "That must have been hard. Being around all of us when we..." She hesitated, guilt flickering across her face. "When we treated you the way we did." Jack gave a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm used to it. People see what I don't have before they see who I am. I learned a long time ago not to let it break me." Katrine lowered her gaze, her hands twisting together nervously. "You're stronger than any of us, Jack. That night on the island proved it. And..." She looked up at him again, her cheeks pink. "I want to be your friend. Not because you're a hero now, but because you're you." Jack studied her for a moment, her sincerity shining through. Then, for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to truly smile. "I'd like that. A friend sounds good." From that day on, their friendship blossomed. They studied together, laughed together, and shared stories about their dreams. Jack told her about wanting to build a future, where he didn't have to depend on anyone's charity, where he could stand on his own. Katrine confided her struggles too, how being from a wealthy family wasn't as perfect as it looked, how expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. Weeks turned into months. The initial buzz around the island trip faded. But Jack and Katrine's bond only grew stronger. They became inseparable. Their classmates noticing how they gravitated toward each other naturally. Charlotte, however, wasn't blind to it. Though she had softened after the trip, she still watched them with a mix of jealousy and regret. She had lost her power over the group. And seeing Jack, once the boy she had mocked, now admired and growing close to Katrine, made her chest burn with something she couldn't quite name. But Jack didn't pay attention to Charlotte anymore. His world had shifted, narrowed down to the quiet moments he shared with Katrine. One evening after study group, Katrine walked with Jack to the bus stop. The air was cool, the street lamps glowing softly. They walked side by side, their shoulders brushing occasionally. Jack, she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah? What if I told you that I don't just want to be your friend? Jack stopped walking, turning to her. His heart pounded, though he tried to keep his expression calm. What do you mean? Katrine's face flushed pink under the streetlight. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking with his. I mean, I like you. More than a friend. Silence hung between them, the sound of cars in the distance filling the gap. Jack's chest tightened. No one had ever said words like that to him before. He had lived his whole life unseen, unloved, and now this. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, but all he saw was sincerity, her eyes shining with something pure. Slowly, carefully, Jack spoke. I like you too, Katrine. Her lips curved into a smile, relief washing over her face. They stood there for a moment, under the glow of the street lamp, the world around them fading. And though they didn't say more, something unspoken passed between them, a promise, a beginning. From that night onward, their friendship blossomed into something deeper. They weren't just companions anymore. They were partners, confidants, two hearts finding warmth in each other. For Jack, who had grown up with nothing, it felt like finally having something worth holding on to. For Katrine, who had grown up with everything but sincerity, it felt like finally finding something real. And together, they stepped into a future neither of them had expected, but both of them desperately needed. Jack and Katrine's bond only grew stronger with time. They studied together, ate together, and became each other's safe space. What began as a spark during the darkest night of the island had now grown into a steady flame, something neither of them could hide anymore. But love, especially in a world divided by wealth and status, was never simple. Katrine's family noticed the changes in her. She smiled more often, spent more time outside the mansion, and spoke about school with a new excitement. Her parents, especially her father, were curious. One evening at the dinner table, her father finally asked, Katrine, you've been different lately, happier. Who is it? Her cheeks flushed. She hesitated, but she wasn't the kind of girl who lied easily. His name is Jack. He's my friend. Her father raised a brow. Friend, or more than that? Silence filled the room. Her mother exchanged a knowing glance with her father, and Katrine realized there was no point in hiding it. She lifted her chin, her voice firm despite her racing heart. More than that, I like him. Her father's expression hardened. And who is this Jack? What family does he come from? The question sliced through the air like a blade. Katrine's hands tightened around her fork. She had dreaded this moment. He doesn't have a family. He grew up in an orphanage. He's at my school on a scholarship. The room grew colder. Her father set his silverware down with a loud clink. Absolutely not. You will not involve yourself with someone like him. Katrine's mother spoke softly. He's a good boy, perhaps. But our daughter deserves someone of equal standing. Katrine's heart ached. She wanted to scream that Jack was worth more than any wealth, that his courage, kindness, and strength were things no money could buy. But the words stuck in her throat. She excused herself from the table and rushed to her room, tears burning her eyes. That night she called Jack. They don't approve, she whispered, her voice trembling. They don't want me to see you. Jack was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy. I understand. I'm not from your world, Katrine. Maybe they're right. No, she snapped, louder than she intended. They're wrong. You're braver, stronger, and kinder than anyone I know. I don't care what they say. I won't give up on you. Her words hit Jack like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. No one had ever fought for him before. No one had ever believed in him so fiercely. In the weeks that followed, Katrine argued with her parents again and again. Her father was stubborn, but Katrine was more determined than they had ever seen her. Slowly, her mother's heart began to soften. Noticing the change in her daughter, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of Jack, the strength she showed in defending him. One evening, her mother pulled her aside. You truly love him, don't you? Katrine nodded, her eyes shining with tears. Yes, I do. Her mother sighed, her resistance melting. Then maybe it's time your father and I meet this boy. When Jack came to the mansion for the first time, he wore his best clothes, not expensive but clean and neat. He stood tall, though his heart pounded in his chest. Facing wolves on the island had been easier than facing Katrine's father. The dinner was tense at first. Her father asked difficult questions, testing Jack's patience. But Jack answered honestly, without arrogance or fear. He spoke of his dreams, to build a life of his own, to work hard, to prove that where you come from doesn't define who you are. By the end of the night, something in her father's eyes had shifted. Respect. It wasn't full approval yet, but it was a beginning. Months later, the walls of disapproval crumbled. Katrine's parents saw what their daughter had seen all along, that Jack wasn't defined by poverty, but by his courage and character. Years passed, and Jack and Katrine built a life together. What started as friendship turned into love, and love turned into a family. Jack, once the lonely orphan boy, finally had a home, not built by wealth but by love and respect. And whenever people asked how their story began, Katrine would smile and say, "On an island during the worst storm of our lives, when everyone turned against him, and he still stood to protect us all." Jack would chuckle softly, his arm around her, and add, "That night changed everything." And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment about your favorite part of Jack and Katrine's journey, because sometimes the most unexpected heroes come from the most unexpected places.